York County is so much more than just a stop for gas along I-80. 17 County is filled with unique individuals with unique stories, just wanting to be told.
Welcome to another episode of 17 County Podcast, where we spotlight the people, projects, and progress powering growth across our region. From business expansion to community revitalization, we bring you behind the scenes of what's shaping our future. We're proud to recognize the organizations that make this podcast possible. A special thank you to the dedicated stakeholders investing in local impact. Central Valley Ag, Clutie Incorporated, Overland Ready Mix, Collins Aerospace, Meade Lumber Company, and Perennial Public Power District. We're also grateful for the continued support of our financial stakeholders, Henderson State Bank, Midwest Bank, and York State Bank, who help drive business sustainability across the county. Empowering innovation and reliability behind the scenes, we recognize K-Junction, OPPD, and Nebraska Public Power District. Your support fuels the stories we share and the future we're building together. Now, let's get into today's episode. Today on the 17 County Podcast, we're joined by someone at the heart of community leadership and strategic momentum, Barry Redfern, the Mayor of York. With a strong commitment to public service and a smart growth mindset, Barry has been instrumental in moving York forward with impactful projects that address both today's needs and tomorrow's opportunities. From enhanced public safety facilities to proactive economic development strategies and long-term community planning, this is a conversation about vision, leadership, and partnerships that make it all happen. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. That was a wonderful introduction.
Yeah, of course. I guess before we really dive into all of the projects, I think we should probably get a taste of who you are. So who are you? What do you do?
You know, my job is I've been in banking in York for 40 years, and I grew up in York and went to Lincoln Grade School, which is now, you know, before there was just one big elementary school, and I was the first class to be in the middle school, which was in the old high school, and so it was the second class to start the ninth grade in the new high school, which is still the high school today, other than it's been there. And then I went to Nebraska Wesleyan and got the opportunity to come back and work for the Sack family at York State Bank, and never really thought I was going to come back to York and do that, but I did, and all of a sudden 40 years later I'm still here.
I mean, we're happy you're still here.
Well, I am
it's
too.
All worked out.
When you get to be, as time goes on, you're happy to just be anywhere.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's get right into the nitty-gritty, all of the projects that are going on. There is a lot.
There is.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is very visible, the fire station.
It's just so exciting to see it take shape up there and be in that part of town. One of the things I'm proud of is that this conversation started in about 2016.
Oh, wow.
You know, were we going to remodel the old station? Were we going to do a new one? And basically decided after we got estimates that between the operational systems, the actual size of the building compared to the size of this equipment and everything else, and the fact that those guys lived there and the living quarters were very substandard, that it was going to cost so much to remodel that it was really better to spend the money to build something that, you know, in reality should last York most of the rest of the century.
Wow, so definitely a long-term planning project.
Yeah, I don't know that, you know, if we'll have more needs in the future, but you could probably think that facility will be there for a long, long time. And if we do something, you know, there could be 20 years from now or something, a satellite somewhere else or something. But I think that's going to be the anchor. And when we started looking for places to put it, which is, you know, I was looking at, you know, what ground does the city own? Where can we put it? Where do you go? And you know, the chief and the captains and people really liked it up there. I mean, it's close to the hospital. It's got a lot of great accessibility. You can go any direction in York without getting stuck at the tracks.
Yeah.
You know, which is a huge thing for them. So it really did lend a lot of stuff. And even though the interstate area is where you hear a lot of the big things and a lot of things that go out there, you know, 85% of those, because York's one of the few towns of our size that has a paid fire EMT service. And so, you know, 85 to almost 90% of the calls are EMT type calls. And most of those are in the city limits, actually. So
Wow. That's interesting.
I know, and even though there's fire calls and a lot of things, their calls keep going up and getting more busy in some of those bigger fire calls, but, there's a lot of calls where they go pick people up,
Sure.
that call 911, so.
Sure. So when you look at the old station versus the new, what are some key features that you guys really focused on when looking at the building itself?
Yeah, and I can't compliment the staff over there and the captains and all the time they spent with the chief, with Chief Tony Bestwick doing this, because they really have tried to lay it out to be as workable and affordable as we could. And so I think obviously I've talked about the length. The size of the garages and they'll be able to pull in from the back and pull out the front. They've got the training tower that's there, and then, the access of being able to go either direction and a lot of things on a street with a lot of lanes, I think is going to open up some area for them. It was just really tight quarters, and the living quarters and things are going to just be so much nicer for them for the nights when they spend several nights there when they do their shifts. So it needs to feel a little more like home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this project directly reflects how invested you guys are in the safety of anyone who is in and around York. How would you say that reflects that drive to, promote safety?
Well, I think it's to live in a community and talk about quality of life without safety, without that as a start, and then knowing that when you need something or your family needs something or somebody, that those people are there to serve is huge. So, a lot of people say all the money we collect off the interstate, but we invest a lot of that for the amount of safety things that we do out that direction too. So even though we get some sales tax, it's not all profit, but it's a priority to us in everything we do, and it's not just in fire and police and it's the public works, and it's, our other facilities, safety and for not only our employees, but for what they're providing to our citizens is huge.
Absolutely.
I would throw one more thing, as we look at the long-term commitments to public safety, and one of the things, and this, hasn't been approved yet, but I'm kind of throwing it out there. But I really want to take the fire station now and turn it back into the police station.
Oh, wow.
It'll take some remodeling dollars, but the things that made it not work for a fire station are not the same things that would make it not work. So really, it's a big garage. And then they could have offices and the things they need, but they don't spend the night there. So you don't need those living quarters. We can make that work. But where they're at now makes that a very congested area. And they have no indoor parking. We had the hailstorm. Every one of our vehicles was out. When it's winter and cold and they have to stop by, they have to let cars, police cars just continue to run, because you can't have the windows frost over if there's an emergency.
Right.
All of those are sitting outside all the time. So to be able to bring those in, give them a home. And then even looking past that, the city, as we continue to grow and do things, we've got people practically in closets and in the basement and different things over there, that we can take half of that building and make it administrative, and the other half make it more of a public works, water department, all of those things on the other side. So I'm kind of thinking beyond the fire, one thing always leads to another. So, I know we'll see how that conversation goes. It's budget time now.
Yep.
And so it's great to come up with the ideas, and then it's another thing to figure out how to pay for those.
Yep,
so.
Absolutely understand. I love the idea, though, that logically it makes sense.
It does. I think, for what we want to accomplish, and like I said, we're trying to set the fire station up for the rest of this century. I think if we do these things, we set for decades up these other city facilities and really puts York in a really good position. And with that, which is something that we're doing now, which maybe later it will just be gone, but we have made a deal to acquire the building, abandoned, kind of not used building to the south of the city offices, and we're going to demo that. So we hope that will be some green space, a nice entry into town, and we'll see what ideas come once it's gone, of what might fit in there. And
that's exciting.
it is. That's
Very
exciting too. So
yeah, so much potential.
Yeah.
So talking about growth and future planning, Retail Coach is a kind of newer thing that has been brought to the community. Well, first of all, what is that?
So Retail Coach, we went out and as we started having discussions, and I'll go back just a little bit, and one of the things that we worked on really hard last year was, and it seems funny because we all think it's so, there's so much activity, but there were some rundown buildings like a Burger King, some other buildings that we've seen improvements, the Bosselman Pump and Pantry, with a major expansion, now Freddy's, a coffee shop coming, 2 hotels. And a lot of that stuff is because we did put that area in a TIF area where we can do some incentives with TIF, which to be just, blunt, it makes it from a project that won't happen to a project that will.
Yep.
Because of the cash flow and return on investment that people are looking for. So very excited about what we've done out there and thought that this is, we've had those successes right away that I've just mentioned, and so I'm kind of a believer when things are going good and you have some success, it's a pretty good time to put your foot on the pedal.
Yeah.
We worked with Lisa YCDC and also Sue. Dr. Cropper is very supportive, and we basically got together and put out a request for qualifications of a couple companies and chose this one. And what they're going to do and what they're doing for us right now, and there's something coming up where they'll be in Las Vegas talking to many not just food, but retailers too, about the benefits of being in York, and where they've shown, sometimes they think York is a small market, only 8,000 people, but when they did their research and start doing cell phone data, all of that, they find out, our market's actually closer to 45, 50,000 people that are using this area. And with the interstate. So they're talking, we did a survey and we had over 1,500 responses of people, obviously sit down restaurants. Some of the, my favorite one is usually I get in crayon from about every few months that says, Mayor Barry, we need a Chick-fil-A or a Raising Cane's, sign Maddie, or sign, get that done in crayon. So that's always a big one. But also the stores, they've really found out early on, we're very underserved in, some clothing and some other retail. And so there's some of these smaller box stores, I don't really have any that are coming, but they're contacting those for us and saying, look at all the people in this area that would come to this area for this kind of service. So very optimistic about what they're going to do, and they're very encouraged about what we have to offer.
Wow, so that area, especially that interstate area, is going to look completely different. Probably in the next 10 years. Yeah,
you put another hotel south of Wendy's. You put a hotel finally that we've wanted for a long time right next to the convention center. You get some other things changing there. I think there'll be some growth out there. And, where that goes is driven a little bit. We worked on that as kind of an area of how to provide more infrastructure, which has to go with this to do things. But, the comprehensive plan is kind of big, like where do you want some of these things to go? And if we were to get another bigger box store, where's the best place for that to go to lead for roads and infrastructure, and where things would all lead together. And there's been people talk about some residential, out in that area too, to the west. So, there's a lot of possibilities of things that could happen out there. So, 10 years from now, it would be really interesting to see what it looks like.
Yeah. I graduated in 2016, which really wasn't that long ago. And it already looks way different. There's a lot of growth happening.
Yeah, but you could see some buildings and some things where there hadn't been, over this past period of time, we hadn't seen that influx of cash. We hadn't seen somebody doing some new investments. There have been things here and there, but we really hadn't gotten some momentum like we have now.
Right now, yeah. Like
we have now, which is as many things going on as I can remember at any time in a long time.
Absolutely. Speaking of that big picture, the comprehensive plan update is right around the corner.
At Cornerstone Bank, we are committed to providing you the best in banking products and service. With 46 locations throughout Nebraska, we are dedicated to serve you. Cornerstone Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Southeast Community College and Tallgrass. Let's get back to the podcast. Why is this big update being pushed right now?
Well, it's being pushed because it's the law.
Okay, fair.
So every 10 years you're required to update your comprehensive plan, and so our time is up. to do that. So we've contracted out with a company that worked with us on our last one, and a lot of that early process is, again, some survey information, some things, testing. I'm putting together a focus group that's based with community leaders, some council, some elected officials, but some leaders of some different groups to be on that committee. And then there'll be also just community groups that will be called for different meetings to voice their opinions on what should York look like, where should things go, and you usually don't have huge changes, because you modify it as you go and you kind of identify where housing is. But part of it is if somebody's going to go build things, they want to know what other things are going to go around there. And so, adding a new industrial park, that's in the comprehensive plan, probably, kind of identifies what what that area is going to be used for a lot, that's kind of where that's headed, east of York, where we own the water field, where we just did the housing and there's schools, and, that's probably not the best place for the industrial park, so it's good for people to know that's not where it's going to go. Even though maybe someday there's a C-store that does show up out there because people enough growth and with the sports facilities and everything else, maybe that makes sense someday. Right. I've been to a lot of communities where somebody built something and I go, why would you put that there? And then, like you say, 10 years later, you look back and it's right in the middle of everything. It's like, because you're brilliant. That's why you put that there. Right. And so sometimes that's hard to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this lets the community and the council and everybody, and then we refer to this, as you go along, and it's kind of something that, as you start to look at zoning issues and where things go, it should all kind of fit together. So it's a big process, but it's a good, healthy one for a community to look at it. And I think that's why it's kind of a path that every 10 years you should, give some fresh eyes on it and look at that.
Yeah. Do you see any areas really taking center stage or being more, community focus, I guess? I don't know if that's the right words for it.
I nothing's coming, out at me, big, just because we've kind of identified some industrial, we've got some commercial stuff identified. There's obviously, some different places where residential makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, quality of life issues fit into the comprehensive plan. If in fact you got more development towards the interstate area, would you put a smaller park back out there? Would you have some green space out in that area? Is there parking concerns with all the trucks, everything? And if you're going to, we're going to do a trail and have a bridge over, and where do people park and where does all that go? So that's part of some of the design we're working with an engineering firm right now, like how should some of this lay out? Because you got to think, one thing, as we said before, leads to another. And so you have to kind of be a couple of steps ahead when you're thinking about what's going to happen. But those quality of life things are huge, and I know I know the trail was not some people were not in favor of, but it was part of the last comprehensive plan. And, we got the large grants, or we probably wouldn't have taken on something like this. But, those kinds of things in communities are huge deals, and they impact what's going on at the interstate, that new hotel, possibly other things, a housing, another. They want to see those kind of amenities, those kind of quality of life things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It doesn't always make everyone happy.
You can't always make everyone happy.
You do your best, but sometimes it's just not everyone is going to always meet at the same place at the end, and that's so we do our best.
Absolutely. And if you look around, you guys are doing a great job. There is a lot of growth. There's a lot of opportunity. I think that's easy to see. Well,
I mean, there's been so much. Fun quality of life stuff too. When you look at what's happened with the parks and the all-inclusive playground that was built, and and just the LB 357 funds that we've been able to have, and the people of York voted for, have had such a huge impact on this community. I mean, it's the money. I mean, when you think about this, it's the money that fixed the auditorium. It's the money that fixed the community center. It's the money that's paying, and it's still paying for those things, but it's paying for the ball fields. It's going to pay for the fire station.
Wow.
And that's that extra 0.5% sales tax. And that 0.5% isn't being paid just by people of York.
Right.
And so that's been a great benefit, in the resurfacing of tennis courts, new playground equipment in almost every park, upgrading stuff that had been red flagged and dangerous, and, a lot to be proud of. And we took over the soccer fields and, the AstroTurf at East Hill Ballpark, and new shading out at the ball fields, and, the list kind of goes. And it's just, but LB 357 and having some of that cash flow, it's funny. The other day I was talking to some 7th graders and one of them said, "What's the most important thing about being mayor?" And I said, "Don't run out of money."
Yes.
Because if you do, you get in big trouble, But we've been fortunate enough that York's been doing well, and the sales tax has been there, and that LB 357, we've been able to allocate those dollars and I think really get a huge bang for those dollars.
Absolutely. If you look at the broader economic impact too, people come to York, they stay in York, they use your ball field, they eat at your restaurants. It's not just
they're not building 2 more hotels because no one's staying in the existing ones.
Exactly.
Our occupation rates are really good, and it's traveling public. It's people coming because there's destination things here. And we need to build on that and continue to realize that it's good to have them here.
Absolutely. Now we get into the fun stuff about you particularly.
Oh boy.
Surprise. No, I'm just kidding. Hopefully you knew. But how would you say that you balance long-term planning with current needs as a city leader?
Yeah, always one of the biggest challenges that you have, and that's why we make a huge point in having and it's in my mind right now because I was in a budget meeting earlier this morning, and so what we have is this year's budget compared to the last couple of years' budgets, compared to what we propose for next year, and then on the following sheets are the capital expenditures that any department thinks they might have for the next 5 years. So, it's a big picture look. Yeah. And it makes you have to look really hard it's one thing if you have some money and you buy a one-time capital thing. It's another thing if you use that to hire people, because that expense goes every year and carries. So really, really important to understand what you're spending money on, and that you need these things and that you can go forward. Big projects like the fire station, as I said, the conversation that started in 2016. Of trying to figure out, and usually they get failed at once, right. And it takes until you finally go, all right, we got to get this done. But, so sometimes, that sometimes your short-term things that are long-term things or stay short-term for a while, and, because you don't get them all solved right away, but you bring them up. And I'm very hopeful, here's one, just how do I weigh the fact that there probably isn't enough money to pay cash for the police thing, but I want to do it.
Right.
How are you going to finance that? I'm hoping that we'll have some reserves, that things will come in well. We'll have some money, and then we can maybe look and see what we think we can do, and then go out and probably obligate the city for a few years to pay that off over hopefully as short a period of time as we can.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
it's a balancing game,
yeah,
because you have to balance this year's budget, but you have to think. And so, when we started the fire station, and we were in a pretty good place, we put $500,000, right off the top away in a budget year. Now we could have spent that on, anything, but what it did is we had the cash to buy the building, do the demo, do the site. We had some cash, some skin in the game, some money. And so that's what I think is important, and we're, it's just like we had to approve an ambulance at the last meeting to get the 3% discount that was going to run out by May 1st to get an ambulance delivered in November of 2027. So it's that far in advance just on getting an ambulance. So we will be allocating dollars and having to figure that over the next couple of budgets. How are we going to pay for that? And so, just the sheer amount. And we had bought one a couple of years ago, it was $325. Now it's $450. I mean, within a couple of, and so I don't know how things can continue to go up so much, but I mean, it's almost shocking sometimes, how much things cost.
No kidding.
But this future planning so I haven't probably answered your question very well at all, other than the fact that it so much runs together.
Sure.
That every time we do something today, it's about tomorrow. And when you're doing this budget and you're committing things, then you have to look at what the effects of those decisions today are going to be on future budgets and future cash flow.
Wow. A lot of things going on.
Yeah.
Man,
a lot to think
keeping
about.
It all straight. Yeah.
A lot to think about.
So I know the one thing that the city has been really great with is collaborating. So can you speak a little bit to the importance of collaboration within all of the different projects that you're doing?
Yeah, one of the main things when I became mayor and hired Dr. Crawford and talked to her about what are my priorities for York, and it was culture, starting with the culture of the city. And the culture of how we react and deal with other people. It was about relationships, and she does a wonderful job with that. Meets with Mitch at the school monthly. Meets with Lisa at YCDC. She does a lot of that sort of thing, and so those two things, along with the cooperation needed to get things done. So I people would always say that, the city and the county couldn't get along, and Randy Obermeyer's a good friend of mine and we get along great. And, we've worked together, the city and the county, on the 911 communication call center, and we've done that for, years now. And, I think it's great. We're working on some paving things that we're doing. We need to be partners. I mean, the people that are paying taxes don't care which one it is. They want you to work together. So I think, I want to have a good relationship with the county. I think we do. Does that mean we agree on every issue? No. Does it mean that there may be a discussion or sort? Sure. But I mean, I have a great relationship, with them when we work on stuff. The school's been another one. They're part of our LB 357 and have been a great partner on that, and so that's been mutually beneficial for them and projects at the school, along with the community, and people that represent the school were instrumental in helping us get that passed. And so great relationship there. And I think on the business side, we do our best to try and fund, do funding with YCDC, have given money to the, and it's great that we had it through the workforce housing. We've bought the, industrial park and committed for more to try and do things for the business community. So economic development is a big deal. And a partnership with that. And, we really want that culture atmosphere that, if you're doing a project, the city's an asset. Get us involved, see what we can do for you, as opposed to, don't go to the city. They're going to tell you no. That is not what we're there. I tell everyone yes, and then make someone else tell them no at the end of it won't work,
no.
But no, I mean, I think it's just an attitude, and that's a thing. And not to say that it was any horrible thing in the past. I'm just saying, I think, we just, we're really, really working to be positive and having everybody be positive about those projects in the community and working with our partners.
Absolutely. And you have a phenomenal team backing you, both on your board and the employees, the staff that work for the city. So
I know, and
phenomenal.
A lot of those people, as you put together, I mean, you really are, as good as the people that you put around you, and what you create, and that's why the city's doing well.
Absolutely, yeah. So this one's kind of tricky, so bear with me. If you had to describe the city with one word, what would it be and why?
That's always a tricky one, but I think right now I'm thinking I like the word thriving.
Ooh, I like that.
Meaning doing well, being successful, having it be healthy, strong, that whole thriving thing. Now, is it perfect? No. I mean, could we do more? Yes. I mean, is there, I'd love to have more housing. I'd love to have more this and that. But when you look around and you see, houses being built and businesses building and things going there and the things that are going on around, I just like thriving.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. So let's talk about being mayor. What would you say the best part about being mayor would be?
Obviously the people that, the people make it fun. But being a small part of such great things, to see the things happen and, on all the things I've already mentioned, that's the best part.
Yeah. What would you say the most underrated asset York has that more people should know about would be?
Well, the answer is always, the people and the staff you referred to, and I'll always say that. But, I think it's really, if you look at what we have to offer from a quality of like park, recreation, that kind of thing, the activities going on at the community center, the things happening there with Fun City, and I'm always going to, and we're going to make this busier and better, but I'm always saying the auditorium was just it's a huge asset to the downtown, and I really want to see it get used more. I think it's, we just put new speakers in. There's been a lot of investment. I think music can be there. I think people, I go to venues in Omaha and 1,000 people, 500 people are there. I think there's venues there like there used to be. Lawrence Welk used to come to the auditorium, people like that came, they used to have like All-Star Wrestling used to come to the auditorium back in the day. Dean Sack would tell me stories of all that. I really think we need to put that back on the map as an entertainment place and a place to host those kind of events. You can put so many people on the floor, but there's so many people who can sit around. It lends itself to so much. So to me, I'm going to stick with the auditorium being that, even though I think there's a lot of things because I'm proud of all of them, but I think the auditorium is something that, and I know Sharif feels that way, and that we're going to start to promote that a little harder and get things there. But we really, really think, it's such a cool place.
It is. It's beautiful.
And now that it's fixed up and stuff, you can do some entertainment in there. You can host some more events. The convention center is fantastic, but for just a different venue that competes on a little different scale with that, we've got a great thing to offer.
Absolutely. I really like the idea of bringing some like live entertainment.
I know. How fun would that be?
Yeah, I would love that.
I know. I think it'd be super cool.
Yeah. So I think we are getting to where we need to wrap it up. Do you have any words of wisdom for anyone listening, whether they're from York or not?
Well, I think words of wisdom might be a stretch, but I just think, York's open for business, and we're trying to do some good things. So don't be afraid to get involved, and it doesn't always mean that you have to take on some huge position. Make a little difference. We did the Spruce It Up thing, it's the same thing, I told the 7th graders that I look at being mayor as community service, the same as you doing it's not politics for me. It's the same as you picking up trash or you helping your neighbor do something or whatever. It's all the same thing. So get involved in your community. Find a way.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge. I know I learned a lot, always do. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on another episode of the 17 County Podcast. As always, thank you for joining us to explore the business leaders, community champions, and transformational efforts shaping our regional economy. A final word of appreciation to our stakeholders: Central Valley Ag, Clutie Inc., Overland Ready Mixed, Collins Aerospace, Meade Lumber Company, Perennial Public Power District, Henderson State Bank, Midwest Bank, York State Bank, K-Junction, OPPD, and Nebraska Public Power District. Your investment doesn't just support this podcast, it strengthens York County's momentum in innovation, growth, and long-term resilience. Until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and continue supporting the businesses and partners that make our communities thrive.